Hi, everyone. My name is Abigail Titus, and I am a project manager from the Porvu Center for Teaching and Learning here at Yale. And I am working closely with Professor Papademetris here on this exciting new medical software and AI program. So I'm going to pass it to Professor Papademetris to explain more to you about the program and give you a lot of good information here today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, welcome everybody. I see some familiar names on the list and some people I've never met before, so I'm looking to get to know some of you eventually. So I'm going to switch to slides and talk for about 15 minutes about the certificate program, and then we'll take your questions. You can type questions in the Q&A. Abigail will monitor that, and when I'm done with my presentation, we'll go to that. So I'm going to share screen. Let's see if Zoom complies with us. Abigail, I assume you can see my slides? Yes, okay. So this is our new program in medical software and medical AI. You can see the link for the program at the bottom, and we will post all of that. We'll share the video of this presentation for people to see later, and you'll have all the links. So my name is Xenophon Papademetris. I'm a professor of biomedical informatics, data science, radiology, biomedical imaging, biomedical engineering at Yale. And I've been working on medical imaging and medical software for the last 30 years, and that's my areas of interest. Some of you may have taken a previous Coursera class on medical software, which we released a couple of years ago. And this program is, based on that course, but, a big expansion of it, as you will see. I am also the lead author of this textbook on medical software. And again, we'll use some of this for the material for the course. For both of these projects, the Coursera class and the book, you can find more information on the webpage. I'll mention that Abigail helped produce that class in the same way she's working with us in this program. So let me tell you a little bit about the program. We will have 4 modules, each lasting 4 weeks. The first will be Introduction to Medical Software. The second will be Introduction to Artificial Intelligence or Machine Learning. The third, we will put the 2 together and we'll talk about how artificial intelligence integrates with medical software to create products. And in the 4th module, we'll have a more clinically focused setup where we'll talk about current and emerging applications of AI in medicine, and we'll walk you through different areas from radiology to emergency medicine as we go. So this is the structure we're going to follow each week. We release about an hour of pre-recorded video lectures each Wednesday. Sometimes might be an hour and 15 minutes, sometimes might be 55 minutes, depending on the week. You will have time to watch. The students will have time to watch those videos. And then we will also, together with the videos, send a short multiple choice quiz, 10 to 15 questions. That will be due each Monday. We will take the answers to those questions plus any comments. There'll be a space on the quiz for you to ask questions too. And then each Tuesday, we will run a live Zoom session, about an hour, depending on how many questions we have, to review the material, answer questions, harmonize with previous content as needed. We could probably have 2 sessions potentially to accommodate different time zones. And the sessions will be attended by the instructors for that week, plus guest experts for industry. You'll see some names later. And I will try to be there for almost all of these sessions as sort of the main instructor for the program. So as we were trying to figure out what we were trying to accomplish here, one question felt like a good organizing principle. And it's a question on the left, which is understand what it would take to use something like ChatGPT as a medical product, as a medical device in medicine. And by that, I mean, what should one know in order to intelligently participate in this discussion? So you need to understand something about software regulations and processes, something about AI and machine learning, something about how we integrate these things into medical software, and how it gets applied. And really, that's what we're going to do in this course. ChatGPT, if it's going to be used in medicine, it's going to be a piece of medical software. It has module 1. It's AI, so we need to understand what AI is, what machine learning is, the 2 terms especially, and that's module 2. We'll talk in module 3 about how the 2 come together to make these new tools that are software with AI embedded. And then in the 4th module, we'll take you into different clinical scenarios to think about how AI, medical software in general, is used. This is the webpage for the program, and in the welcome video there, I talk about this topic extensively, so I'm not going to repeat everything I said there. But just as a sneak preview, this is from some of the slides we just finished reporting. This is from week 8 of the program. This is from my colleague, Dennis Shang. And what you're seeing here is a setup where This is the Yale Simulation Center. On the top left is a mannequin. It's a patient model, effectively. And this is an attempt to understand how a generative AI, something like ChatGPT, they call it GATGPT here because it's gastrointestinal, would be used and how it affects medicine. You see on the bottom, you enter the question, you get the answer, you enter another question, you get another answer, and this integration. So rather than me talking and describing of it, I'm going to show you about a 30-second clip from one of the recorded lectures. Hopefully the audio comes through that shows, talks a little bit about more. And the voice you're hearing is Dr. Dennis Shang, who's one of the instructors for the program.
So this is from one of our simulation scenarios. You can see that these are emergency physicians who are trainees. The two on the left are interviewing the patient, which is the mannequin, and they're referencing the electronic health record instance that is there right next to the mannequin. They talk to the patient and they come over to the attending, who is over on the right, and they have access to an AI dashboard along with the chatbot interface, which is the generative AI component, to make a decision whether or not this patient is high risk or low risk.
And Dr. Shang will talk a lot more about the challenges of integration, how this changes the practice of medicine, and ongoing issues. But this is brand new technology, as you're aware. So let's walk through the 4 modules. These are the learning objectives for module 1. Our goal is to give you, so you would have a core understanding of the basics of the medical software regulatory process, understand quality management systems, risks management systems, and software lifecycle processes, and understand the unique aspects of software engineering when it comes to medical applications. This is the 4-week outline. We'll have an introduction to regulatory issues in week 1. Week 2 will be quality management systems and risk management. Week 3 and week 4 will be aspects of medical software engineering, the process user needs all the way to validation and usability in week 4. I would be the instructor for this part, and this is the part of the course that directly relates to what we did before on the Coursera class, though a lot of this is updated and expanded. We're presenting at a slightly different level here. Module 2 now, we're going to switch gears and talk about introduction to medical AI and machine learning, what AI or machine learning are and their role in the development of medical software, to understand what deep learning is and why it's the most promising machine learning technique, and understand the role and potential of generative AI in medical applications. And this is the thing that's taking the world by storm right now. Here are the 4 modules. I will do an introduction to machine learning in week 5, and then my colleagues will come in. I'll show you who they are in a minute and give you week 6 classical machine learning techniques. Week 7, we'll talk about neural networks and deep learning. Week 8, we'll talk about generative AI. And my colleagues will teach a lot of this material. Let me introduce them to you. Professor Robert McDougall from Biostatistics and Biomathematical Informatics and Data Science. Professor Hoon Cho, also from Biomedical Informatics and Data Science. He'll cover the neural networks part. Dr. Chin-Yu Chen, who will soon be an assistant professor in our section. We'll talk about deep learning. Dr. Hua Zhu, who's a vice chair for research. He'll talk about large language models, and he's one of the leading experts in the medical field in this area. And Dr. Dennis Shang, whose voice you've already heard, he'll talk about the application of generative AI in medicine and give you a worked example. Module 3 now will put the two together, and we'll think about how the use of artificial intelligence machine learning techniques is changing how medical software works. We'll talk about the emerging regulatory structure, and we'll learn about social aspects and emerging horizontal regulations, the UAI Act, the recent Biden executive order, issues like fairness and related issues here. So this is the structure. Week 9, I will give you an overview of the regulatory landscape for AI/ML-enabled medical devices, medical software. Week 10, I will again lecture mostly and talk about software engineering and how AI/ML is changing it. Week 11, some of my colleagues will come and talk about data management, databases, privacy, security. I will do the security part. And then week 12, we'll talk about broader issues. What are explanations? We'll have one of my colleagues from sociology come and talk there. We'll talk about these new emerging horizontal regulations that I mentioned before. So some of our lecturers, section chair, Professor Lucila Ochme Machado, who's a chair of our section and deputy dean for Biomedical Informatics at the School of Medicine, will come and talk to you about data privacy and evaluation. Professor Kei-Hoi Chang will talk about databases and ontologies. Professor Daniela Meeker, who's also the Chief Research Information Officer for the Yale School of Medicine in the New Haven Health System, will talk about data governance, privacy regulations, and related issues like that. And then Professor Akamenon from sociology will come and talk about explanations and talk a little bit about what does it mean when we think about an explanation from, let's say, social science perspective as opposed to just computer science perspective. And then in module 4, we'll go into the clinic. We want to understand the use of AI and ML-enabled software applications in radiology and medical imaging more broadly. We want to understand what clinical decision support systems are and how they're being used. We want to learn some about emerging applications, and I say such as multimodal AI, data auditing, genomic analysis. Those things are still a little in flux, but a lot of those things will be there. So this is the structure. Week 13, we'll talk about radiology and medical imaging. I'll do part of that with colleagues from radiology. Week 14, I apologize. Week 14, we'll talk about clinical decision support systems. Week 15, we'll take a global health view angle, and one of my colleagues, Annie Hartley, will talk to you about the application of digital health applications in the field in Africa, and we'll have a video from Zanzibar as part of this work, and think about how does this work translate outside, hospitals in the United States. And in week 16, we'll have a collection of segments about emerging applications of AI-enabled medical software. So some of the lectures here, Professor Sanjay Aneja will talk to you about explainability and the use of imaging for therapy, in radiation therapy primarily. Dr. Melissa Davis will talk about radiology and both efficiencies in radiology and the use of AI/ML tools in the practice of radiology. Professor Miriam Aboyan will give you an overview of the tools that they use in radiology, the PACS system, and we'll get a demo of that. Dr. Andrew Taylor from emergency medicine will talk a lot about clinical decision support, and he leads some of this work here at Yale, so we'll hear about him in that context and in the context of emergency medicine, which is his area of practice. Professor Marianne Hartley will talk to you about global health and her work in Africa in the field, working with global health organizations. And then in the last week, we'll have a set of segments from lectures such as Dr. Li Xuan, who is in charge of the digital transformation for the Yale School of Medicine. And he jokes that his 2 seconds will be my current problems and what I'm hoping to do about them. Dr. Marisco will talk about data auditing and the use of data auditing to improve hospital processes. Dr. Ji-Hoon Kim will talk about security and privacy and issues of that nature. In addition to us, you will hear embedded clips from guest experts from industry. This is the original set of people we interviewed 2 years ago as part of the Coursera class. Those of you who took that will have heard some voices. Let me just give you one example of a clip from Dr. Sarah Sarkar, who's an old colleague and experienced medical software engineer. And when you see the video on the top left-hand side, that's exactly how these people will show up on your screen as part of our lectures. Now, we provide all of those interviews in full on YouTube. These videos are already available. The next set of segments will start becoming available in January. And in addition, many of these people will join our guest sessions to answer your questions as industry guest experts as we can manage their schedule. So let's hear the first video clip from Mr. Sarkar, Dr. Sarkar. He'll tell you a little bit about the difference of working in software in industry versus working in academia, and his experience in transitioning from his PhD life to an industrial project effectively.
Joined a company in California, and I walked in the first day all ready to impress. I was ready to write as many lines of code as they needed me to write. I was all ready to go, all ready to impress. And so imagine my surprise. Instead of getting even one single piece of code to write, what I got was one thick binder full of SOPs, standard operating procedures. I opened them up, tried to read them. They were completely esoteric. I didn't understand like one single word of what was written in them or why we even needed to do this. I felt all at sea. so that's my first day at work. And every serious software development that is done in the medical device industry happens under the umbrella of a quality management system. So there's a QMS to follow, there are standards to follow, there are procedures to follow. It's not about sitting and writing a piece of code in front of the computer. That probably does work out in academia because the sort of the scope is different, but that's not how it is definitely in the industry. And definitely like a lot of the serious work that happens for developing any software program or medical software device happens even without writing a single piece of code. A lot of it happens sort of behind the scenes, trying to understand what the user requirements are and all that.
So this is the list of people we're interviewing right now. All but the last three, we have the news recorder. So Mr. Bernhard Kappe from Orthogonal will talk about agile processes. Dr. Neil Biasucci from Confinis in Switzerland will tell us about EU regulations. Attorney Bradley Thompson will talk about the FDA regulations and some of the issues we're facing there. Dr. Kievan Loyen from the Netherlands will talk to us about AI in radiology and emerging trends. Rosanna Leo from Drexel Law School will talk about global AI regulations in the US and China and Europe. Mr. Hirohiro Kuda from Carnegie Mellon in Japan will talk to us about software engineering practice with AI. Mr. Randy Horton, you see his picture there. He'll talk in a little bit. He'll talk about cloud issues and how medical devices and cloud services intersect. Another one of my software engineering colleagues, Mr. Lakin Lowry, talk about again software engineering and AI. Mr. Oli Gusim, who is at Edwards Life Sciences, will talk about cybersecurity. That's his area of expertise. Ms. Megan Graham, who's a very experienced medical quality consultant, regulatory consultant, will talk to us about those issues. Mr. Corey Johnson from Bold Insight will talk about usability and human factors. And finally, Dr. Ella Dwalash, who's the CEO of AIDoc, who's one of the leading companies in joining AI tools for radiology, will talk to us obviously about AI development radiology. So this was part of the interview. The clip you're going to hear is part of the interview with Randy Horton, and he captured perfectly what we're trying to accomplish in this program. Maybe I brainwashed him. We've talked a lot over the last year. So take a listen.
The point you emphasized in that this is an era for deep generalists. When I was younger, I earlier in my career, I had that, but there wasn't a cool phrase that social scientists had created like deep generalists. We were called jack of all trades, master of none. Deep generalist sounds much cooler. And there actually is some science behind it. Because right now we're not at a point where you can say, oh yeah, I'm in charge of regulatory and the cloud people handle that cloud stuff. And I don't really understand it, but I'm sure they've got it fixed. That won't cut it now. You have to actually, everybody has to know something about everybody else's business. That means that, R&D and engineering types need to understand something about the law and regulation and vice versa in terms of understanding the technology. It's just the way of the world.
And that's really our hope for this program, that the students here get a broad understanding of the entire field, from the regulatory, the technical, the software engineering, the clinical aspects, so that you can understand the conversations and be participants in it. Just a word of acknowledgement. In addition to the instructors, there are all the other people behind the scenes. You will see our 4 student assistants, Anya, Maya, Violet, and Wendy, who are reviewing the lectures. You will interact with them as TAs in this program. They will handle your questions and help organize us. Support from the Porvu Center of Teaching and Learning, the digital education team. Abigail, who's on the call, and Sarah Epperson, the other person on the left. Aikio Tamuraho, who's a person in the section of bioinformatics data science, handling the program both administratively and helping with graphic design and the webpage. And finally, Rick Leon, who directs the Yale Broadcast Studio, who's with us almost daily right now as we report lectures. Here's a picture of him in action on console. Let me show you a little bit of how the recording is done. This is a picture of the studio. This is where we start. We stand in front of these 2 cameras. There are no students in the room. We're staring into these black boxes and trying to record, which is a challenge, but we'll get used to it eventually. This is a full-fledged television studio, and Yale produces all kinds of things here. The other fun thing about it is that in the green room where the speakers go to prepare, lots of people who've been through this have signed. And if you can squint a little bit, you see some famous names. Bill Clinton, President Clinton, was here in the past. Hillary Clinton recorded in the studio. Jim Rothman and Robert Schiller are both Yale Nobel Prize winners from a few years ago. And, as a son of a journalist, Bob Woodward, who's a very important name in my family, but maybe you don't know who that is the journalist who broke the Watergate story. He's a Yale grad from 1965, apparently, since all these people seem to sign the year of graduation. So with that, for more information, you can go to our webpage, and we're launching in March. We'll start admissions in January, and then we'll go from there. The video here tells you a little bit of what I just said in slightly different words. To apply, we'll start applications in January after the holidays. We'll start the program in March. And this is a QR code that takes you to the webpage. So with that, I will stop here, and we'll take any questions for the next 20 minutes or so as people have. Thank you. If you could just type questions, please, in the chat, or we can just let you speak. I don't know. Abigail, how do you want to do this? The couple of people raised, somebody raised their hand. Maybe not.
Yeah, if you raise your hand, I'm happy to I can let you speak, or if you put questions in the chat, we can also do that.
Yeah,
All
somebody-
right. Yes, let me. Okay, Ramin, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for explanation. I have a quick question because right now I am in the regulatory industry. I am a technical reviewer of medical device software. And I was wondering, because regulations are changing almost every month and very frequent, how does that work? Are you covering the most updated regulations, or are you referring to a specific IACS standard? So how do you cover these things? I appreciate if you explain. Thank you.
Yeah. So two parts. Yes, we will cover a fair amount of this, but let me back up. Our goal here isn't to walk you through how you would do a regulatory submission. Our goal is to teach you about the principles behind this and what these things are. We'll talk about standards, the big four in the medical world: 13485, which is the quality system; 14971, risk management; 62304, which is the software lifecycle process; 62366, which is the usability standard. And then we'll talk about some of the emerging technical information posts from Amy, both on agile processes and risk management for AI. So we will be fairly up to date. Some of these documents are just universally being released. In fact, one of the technical information reports we'll talk about, which is the Amy guidance on cloud medical devices, is still in process. I'm on the committee who prepares it. So we'll hear a little bit about things that are not even published. So we will review those things. We'll review guidance as it comes to software, and we'll try to integrate some of that in the discussion as to why we do things the way we do. So we'll talk about validation. We'll walk you through the process of validation, but we'll use some of the FDA guidance on validation as part of that discussion. So that's the big picture there. I hope that at least helps someone. There are a number of questions on scholarship and financial aid. There will be some financial aid. This is the first round, so it might be more limited in the first go round as we accumulate some reserves, but the plan is to have a financial aid program. How extensive and how many people we can afford to do this for, hopefully that's a number we'll be able to increase. This first session, we'll keep the numbers limited somewhat just to figure out the program ourselves. We don't want to work through it, but we'll go from there. There's a question about what are the eligibility requirements. We're looking for some kind of bachelor's degree in a related area and or work experience. Even if you don't have a degree, if you tell me you have a lot of experience in the medical device industry or pharma doing related things, we will count that towards it. Our primary concern isn't so much eligibility for you as to make sure that we don't waste your time. So we want people who we feel are at the level where they can participate and understand. So some kind of undergraduate degree is a good baseline in somewhat related areas. You know, it's a very broad program. So all of you who take a program like this will know some of this material, and some of this material will be very strange to you, and we'll try to guide you through all that as well. Federal employees, that's something for us to discuss. We haven't thought about it. There's also the question about Yale employees, and that's one of the topic as well. If you can tell us what agency you're in. We were talking about the FDA at some point, trying to do a special process for them, but that's something to be discovered. Thank you. VA. Yeah, we'll talk about the VA at some point as well.
And Zenios, one question here is, would the course include training on creation of digital or web applications?
Not explicitly. We're not going to walk you to that level of practical thing. We're going to give you high-level guidelines as to what you need to worry about. So in some sense, our focus on the software engineering would be how you gather requirements, how the big picture design happens, as opposed to, this is not a programming class, and we're not going to do programming over 16 weeks. As I tell my students, I always say that figuring out what to code is much harder than programming, and we're going to focus on the figuring out what to code and the process for it, as opposed to the details of programming. There are lots of courses online for web applications. Will you explain with practical examples how software systems have split into medical device modules and not medical device modules? We'll do that very tangentially, although when we have a regulatory expert in the room for some of the Q&A sessions, that's a question you could ask for that. That's a new area, right? We went from everything is a medical device to software as a medical device with the hardware not being part of the medical device to now part of the software is a device and the rest of the software is not a device. And this is an area. We can thank the Apple Watch for some of these things. The Apple had to lobby for this as well. Regulatory topics US focus on international. We'll talk a fair amount about EU regulations and the EU AI Act. We'll touch a little bit on China, but not a lot. We'll talk about those primarily. Abigail, I see an application process question.
And then I can answer this question. When the application is open, will it be sent out in email? I'm happy to, I can reach out to, everyone who was on this list and anyone who has completed the expression of interest form, and I will share out the link to the application. And we're planning on opening that in the first week of January after the new year.
Anybody else? We will touch a little bit on digital health product development towards the end of the program in the application sections. Again, there's a lot of what we need to go through here, but you will see examples from all over, and especially in the segment we'll talk about the global healthcare. A lot of that is digital global health applied in the field. You'll see some videos from Zanzibar where there's no doctor inside and the tools are what they are. So we'll have some examples from there too. We're coming to 1:30, so we'll give them a couple of seconds for anybody else who has anything pressing. We will make the video available online, so this was pre-recorded, so you will hear more. You'll be able to watch it again. So Abigail, unless there's nothing else, we can thank people and.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you all for attending. Feel free to reach back out if you have any questions or anything. And as Zenio said, we will share the recording and I will be back in touch with information about the application once that is live. So I hope everyone has a good afternoon or day, depending on where you're at in the world.